Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Dover City Council for October 13th, 2014. We'll begin this evening with our invocation led by the Reverend Theodore Henderson, followed by the pledge to our nation's flag led by Councilman Lynn.
We have much to be thankful for. Even in our adversities, we are blessed beyond our wildest means, and for that, we're thankful. Special blessings and concern goes out today for our former beloved Mayor Carey and his wife. Be with her through her healing process, and we're thankful, dear God, for the able physicians which have done, we know, a masterful job, but continued blessings upon that family. Continued blessings upon our city councilmen, dear God, who are elected officials, but let us never forget, dear God, that as we are in positions of responsibility, that likewise increases our servanthood that we should have toward all of your people. So let us first be servants foremost and always, looking for the needs and the cares of our beloved community, which we all want to advance forward. Bless everything said during this proceeding today, our president, and all of our elected officials. In your name we pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Council, you have before you this evening's agenda. I would like to defer item 2B, the Kraft Foods presentation, till later. Other than that, are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda?
No additions. I'll go ahead and recommend for approval as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hutchison, second by Mr. Lynn. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Now I have before you the consent agenda. The items on the council agenda that are considered routine and non-controversial are marked with an asterisk and will be acted upon by a single roll call vote of council. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. What's the pleasure of council?
Move the approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Slavin, seconded by Mrs. Williams. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Perza?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bono?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2A, presentation of a certificate of appreciation for Amy Mullen. I would invite Mrs. Mullen, Mayor Christensen, Councilman Slavin, Greg Moore, and Bill Neaton to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if you could face the podium.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, could you read this certificate into the record?
Certificate of appreciation presented to Amy Mullen for her countless hours spent organizing and managing the Lockerman Way Farmers Market held during the summer and fall of 2014. Beginning preparations early during the previous winter, Ms. Mullen amassed vendors for the market, developed entertainment enhancements to draw visitors to the downtown area, and facilitated and marketed the event. Her energy and enthusiasm have contributed greatly to the success of the farmers market, and her efforts are greatly appreciated by the Downtown Dover Partnership, the City of Dover, and the entire local community. In grateful appreciation, October 13, 2014.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Amy, on behalf of the Downtown Development Partnership, the City of Dover, and all of your vendors, you certainly epitomize more than energy and enthusiasm. She makes me nervous. Each Wednesday when I've gone down to the farmers market, She comes up to greet me in her pink shirt and pink sneakers, and then disappears and then is suddenly back again. So on behalf of everyone gathered here, we'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation. Mr. Neaton, Mr. Moore, Mr. Slavin.
I'd just like to say, we went from a ho-hum farmer's market to a wow farmer's market this year, and it was all Amy's doing. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome, thank you.
I'd just like to, on behalf of our board, this is the reason that our board exists, for people like you who give countless hours, and it was a wow event. So we just want to give her a big thank you and a lot of appreciation, and have you back next year.
And I'm just going to agree with what they said, and thank you very much for the many hours that you put in for us. Thank you very much.
I just appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do it. You didn't know me. You didn't know whether I could do it or not do it or anything. And I really do appreciate the DDP for their patience as I learned. And I learned protocol and how you can do this, and no, you can't do that, and you have to ask to do this. And no, Amy, you can't just run up there and do that. You have to ask permission first. So I do appreciate their patience with me as I learned.
Thank you.
Item number 2B on the agenda is being deferred until the next meeting as a certificate of congratulations for Kraft Foods on their 50th anniversary. Item number 2C, and I will have to admit to you, until about 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't know who this next gentleman is. But I would like to take an opportunity to invite our good friend, Colonel Alan McLean, to the podium this evening.
Your experience is not unlike so many others, because I have been called by many for many years the unknown hero of the revolution. I don't know about the hero part, but I do know about the unknown part. A recent survey in my hometown of Duck Creek Smyrna, uncovered the first 20 people asked, do you know who Alan McLean is? No. Do you know about his historic home on Mount Vernon Street? No. The survey was conducted 2 years later and discovered that 20 people asked, 2 people knew, so I guess that's progress. So the reason I'm coming here tonight is because too little attention has been paid to those who gave so much for the cause of liberty and the beginning of our newborn nation. But a group of citizens have planned a symposium at Wesley College on Saturday, October 25th, to honor me, but to honor all of the men who fought, and some women as well. There were some women. I had 8 years in the military, very close to our commander, General Washington, and as a result of that, as soon as he was elected president, he appointed me the first Marshal of Delaware. So I served 8 years in that capacity, and just as he was leaving office, on February 27, 1797, I received a letter from him appointing me the tax collector for the Port of Wilmington, a position which I still hold. I was appointed by the first president of our United States and still serve into the term of our 7th. It won't go on much longer. This gout that I have and other problems that we aging folks have can't be forever, but it's been a most enjoyable life. I want to invite you to come to that symposium at Wesley College on Saturday, October 25th, an all-day program, and everybody who shows up will get a copy of this booklet, Alan McLean, Patriot, Soldier, Spy, Port Collector. Very fine book, which is being printed by the Delaware Heritage Commission. And fortunately, there's only going to be, no copies are going to be for sale. They're going to be available to those who attend the symposium, and extra copies are going to go to libraries and schools and historical societies throughout the state. So when the survey is done, some years later, more people than 2 out of 20 will be able to know who Alan McLean was. And I appreciate what these people are doing, and I would appreciate if any of you can attend as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Colonel?
Colonel.
Colonel, what time is that on October 25th?
Begins 9 a.m. at Wesley College in the Peninsula Room on the second floor. And we've got some outstanding speakers coming from Michigan, Virginia. The author, John Nagy, who wrote the book on spying entitled Invisible Ink, is one of our speakers. He also wrote a chapter in the book. Another good friend whom I met 5 years ago, who's been researching Alan McLean for 26 years, wrote a chapter in the book, and he's going to make a presentation. A great-great-great-granddaughter who has been published writing about her great-great-great-grandfather wrote a chapter in the book, and she's going to make a presentation as well. So we've got some outstanding presenters, and you'll get a copy of this book, as well 6 postcards which were printed back in 1975 or 76 as part of the American bicentennial, the bicentennial of the Declaration of Independence. And when I spoke to Belmont Hall a few years ago, they gave me a gift of those 6 cards, and I called and asked if they had any more, and they said, we have enough for you to pass out those cards. One is the painting by Charles Wilson Peale, which is the cover. Another card is the James Peale. Both of these brothers were very notable artists, especially portrait artists during the Revolutionary period, both of whom fought with Alan McLean several battles. And his burial site, his home in Smyrna at 35 Mount Vernon Street. I'm missing one, but anyway, there are 6 cards. Very nice added gift to those who attend. Many people have asked to buy one, but right now there are not going to be enough copies for that. I'm going to work with the commission because I think the demand will be there for more copies. And thank you very much for your time.
Colonel, thank you very much for being here. For those of you who don't recognize the man beneath the wig, that's our own Tom Welsh, who is one of our noted historians about the Revolutionary period and the historical happenings that have been in existence in Dover for numerous decades. Thank you again, Tom, for being here. Item number 2D, presentations of the Mayor's 2014 Arts Awards. I would ask that Brian Miller from the Arts Council join Mayor Christensen at the podium. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
As you know, each year the mayor presents arts awards to youth and to artists in our community. And the first award I'd like to present is to someone who is no stranger to the artistic community here in Dover, Mrs. Sharon Crossan.
Sharon, please step down. Thank you.
Would you like to say something?
Okay. Well, first I want to thank my family and friends for their support. And the only other thing I want to say is it's an honor and a privilege to work with the children, the young adults, and the parents in such a community that supports the arts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, we'd like to invite down to the front the Delaware Friends of Folk.
On behalf of myself presenting these Youth Arts Awards, it gives me great pleasure to present the next award to the Delaware Friends of Folk. squeeze together with Brian and myself to get a picture? Anybody care to say anything?
Just say a few words. I just want to say a thank you to everyone, especially the mayor, for this award. We've been quietly doing this folk music thing in Dover for well over 20 years, and we wish more people knew about us. Our next event, November 22nd, the great Guy Davis will be in Wesley College Chapel. Come and see it. You'll like it.
Gary Knox, would you come forward, please?
Mr. Knox is an award winner in many different ways. He's also a friend. He's also one of our downtown merchants who has stayed the course for many years. If he ever decides to close his business, which I hope he never does, he has a career in photography. I don't know if you've seen any of his pictures in the Delaware State News and around town and in his shop. They are outstanding. Mr. Knox, I'm pleased to present you with this award.
Shouldn't I be doing that?
I'll take care of that, Gary.
Would you like to say a few words?
I'd like to thank Mayor Robin and the Dover Arts Council and the City Council. Getting an award like this makes getting up early in the morning at the crack of dawn and all the gas mileage going out to Bombay Hook back and forth. This makes it worthwhile. We have a beautiful city, thanks to our groundskeepers, and we have a beautiful state, and it's an honor to share what I see with everybody else. Thank you so much.
Next to the podium, I'd like to invite Elizabeth Stand.
Well, the council president introduced you as Elizabeth. I know her as Lizzie. She's a friend of my daughter. She attends St. Thomas More, and she is a talented young person. And so we'd like to present you with this Youth Art Award, Elizabeth, or Lizzie, on behalf of a grateful city. So if you step over here and get your picture, Brian.
Next award recipient will be Marius Sander.
Marius, on behalf of myself and the members of the City Council, I'd like to present you with this the Mayor's Youth Arts Award Council Award. But did you bring your violin with you? Let me tell you something. Yo-Yo Ma should look over his shoulder. This young man performed at the Big Center the other evening during First Friday, and it brought tears to my eyes at what he can do with a violin. So on behalf of the city, we'd like to present you with this award. Ryan, if you want to step around here so we can get your picture taken. A talented young man, look for his name in the future. Thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Okay, thanks.
Next, our Arts Award recipient is Tymere Tompkins.
Good evening, Tymere. We'd like to present you with this Youth Award and another young man who is multi-talented, and you should look for him in the future as an outstanding artist. Want to come around, Brian, and get your picture? Ed?
Yes.
Did you get it?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would also like to note that Alex Brown was not able to attend tonight, and he will be given an award as well. All of the recipients will be noted in our publication and online in the City of Dover publication that will single out each of the award recipients.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. May I invite the recipients and their families to join me in the conference room down the hall? You have some light refreshments.
Thank you. We will go
Thanks.
into recess, Mr. Mayor, for about 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
I've never been quiet, right? Mrs. Townsend has told me I should do this short and sweet and in 5 minutes, so I always take her lead. I've been before you all, and I think several of you have heard this presentation, so I hope I just embellish on it a little more to give it a little clarity. The downtown development districts came from an idea from the governor of January in 2013. A Senate bill was introduced. It was Senate Bill 191 in April 13th. So it was signed, sealed, and delivered. I'm going to tell you, when I went to the legislature, I've never seen anything go through so fast with absolutely no one's having any opposition to it. So we're grateful, and we hope if you all talk to your legislators, you say that your towns need this money. Application designation, local governments must identify proposed downtown development districts in accordance with the act, and that's your central business district. And they must, you being at the city of Dover, must complete the application. Size limits of the district go by population, and the application must include the need for the district plan, and any local incentives that you have. Goals of the application are, it is a competitive process. I know you've all heard it through the grapevine that we figured out who we're going to give this to. We have not. So please be aware, make sure you fill out the application. We're here to help you. David Edgell is the principal planner for Kent County and all the municipalities. He can help you, and I'd be glad to help you too. We realize in the state that all local jurisdictions have different strategies and will have different plans. We've tried to create flexibility in the application so that you all can be creative. There's a dual process to this downtown development districts, and after hearing today, you've got your own downtown districts, so please don't get them confused. The one with the state, we hope the first and foremost will be housing and community development. We need to help build a stable community for long-term residents in the district and in the neighborhoods. We talked, I'm on several boards or development committees. Anne Marie, you wanted me to only be 5 minutes. Where are you?
He's right behind you.
You're standing back in the back with a shepherd's hook.
Okay. We need to help build sustainable neighborhoods. So we don't want this to be a flash in the pan. We want to make sure that the city looks at it and that this program will prosper. We need to increase the home ownership, what we've heard, improve housing for all incomes levels and all backgrounds, and reduce number of vacant houses. Economic development, I think we can sell some of these houses if we can get some commercial vitality to the districts. We need to stimulate job growth, build diversity, an array of businesses, and harness any attraction the towns have. And of course, Dover's beautiful. I'm not just saying it because I live here, but it's a capital, and I think it is just a wonderful sight to see. We need to have the need for the district. The applicant must describe the need for the economic incentives that are, and give economic incentives that are available for this district. They need to be documented with relevant data. Please know that the Office of State Planning has GIS, Geographical Information System, and maps that we can help you with. I think the city of Dover probably has as good GIS maps as a state, but some small local jurisdictions don't have the GIS capability. We do have census data available. There again, I think City of Dover has that, but sometimes since we're the affiliate, we have a little bit more detailed. Examples of the data that will come through the census would be home ownership, poverty levels, vacancy rates, and abandoned buildings. I would venture that you all have that, and that you have that information that you do your planning yearly with and your budget. A district plan, what is it? It's a plan used to guide and redevelopment activities and revitalizations within your district. A detailed strategy for the overall development of the district must accompany this application. It must be consistent with your comprehensive plan and state strategies for spending. And if you have a certified comp plan, it is in compliance with state strategies. That's where we give the money through the state. It must demonstrate coordination with other governmental, non-governmental, and quasi-governmental entities. Local incentives, the local government must implement an incentive package, and I know the City of Dover has done that for several areas, as described in their application. And if you don't do it, we'll revoke your application. That's the short and sweet of it. Failure to do that it won't be just Connie Holland or David Edgell taking that away from you. It'll be the Cabinet Committee on State Planning Issues. We certainly hope this never, never happens. Geographic extent of the district, it must make sense for urban planning and the revitalization. It must concentrate incentives, and a different size limit based on population is something that we'd like to see within your application. We also want the application we hope will include mom and pop operations and larger economic development programs to come in. What does a successful program look like? It's inclusive, large and small developers, nonprofit and for-profit, residents and homeowners may take part in this, we hope. This is some more information. It needs to be well-coordinated, user-friendly. We'd like to cut a lot of red tape. That's really difficult to do within a government entity. But I can tell you that I want to revert back to a master plan that the city of Milford put together before this program was available. And they did a lot of planning. They do have a master plan. And at this point, that area is shovel ready. They will not have to do any changes to their comp plan, no changes to their zoning ordinance, no changes to the site plan. So that is extremely, extremely attractive for any developer that comes within their local jurisdiction. So that's real positive. There are 3 different processes here. The application for designation, which is due November 1st, but I think first working day is November 4th. The Office of State Planning has the responsibility of looking at all the applications. That does not mean that Connie Holland, David Edgell, who is Circuit Rider Planner for Kent County, Herb Benden, Circuit Rider Planner for Newcastle, and Dorothy Morris, Circuit Rider Planner for Sussex, that it'll be our opinion. There'll be a rubrics and a plan that we will look at, and we will score these. Local governments are the applicants. Now remember, the money does not go to you. The money goes to the developer. But we need to know that the developer goes, in my mind, by your district plan. There is money available from the economic development. The Secretary of DITO just gave us a nice little pot of money for the towns. I know I told Anne Marie and several said at the league, please save your receipts if you've had to get a consultant, because we hope through DITO we will get some grants that will go to the local jurisdictions to help you for your master plan. So there'll be 2 pots of money. The Cabinet Committee on State Planning, that's all the secretaries under the governor, will make the recommendation. The governor will designate. The pot of money going to the cities will be the neighborhood building blocks, if you hear that term. And there again, that comes from DITOs. We will receive the applications in November, as I've said, November 4th. We hope to have all the review done by the end of November. We hope to have a Cabinet Committee meeting in December and January, and the governor will designate these districts in January or February. I thank you for this time, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. We really appreciate it, and I know that speaking on behalf of council and staff, we're especially pleased with the $7 million the legislature has seen fit to come up with to help communities throughout the state in their downtown development efforts. This is an extremely important program, and we certainly hope that our people in the city of Dover are able to take advantage of it. We would like for you to stay at the podium for a minute more because we'd like to have you and David Edgell come to the podium. And I would invite Mayor Christensen and Anne Marie Townsend, the Director of Planning and Community Development, to join you at the podium for a proclamation that recognizes National Community Planning Month. Madam Clerk, would you read the proclamation into the record, please?
Whereas in every community, change is constant and affects all of us. However, community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. The full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute the American Institute of Certified Planners endorsed National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our communities and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the City of Dover Planning Commission and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the City of Dover. Now, therefore, I, Robin R. Christensen, Mayor of the City of Dover, Delaware, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2014 as National Community Planning Month in the City of Dover, and encourage all citizens to recognize the valuable contributions made by community and regional planners and our partner agencies at the state and county level, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals.
So, thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to present this to you.
I just have talked to Connie quite a bit in the last month or so as we work on our downtown development district application. And I just think Delaware is a great place to be a planner because we do form relationships. We have some red tape, but not nearly as much as a lot of other places. So I think it's a good time to be a planner, especially with this program now. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'd just like to say that I was just reminiscing with a few people in the back, and sometimes I pinch myself because I can't believe I'm so fortunate to have the job I have, to work with the people I have, and to be part of the City of Dover and the state and the county. It is the fact that we know one another, we respect one another, and we want the very best for this state. So thank you all.
You know, Connie, before you leave, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention something. We have a really fine planning department that's they do an excellent job. And a lot of that is because of your mentoring. And those of you who sit on council floor may not have full awareness of this, but this lady at the podium really brought Anne Marie and David Edgell along. And long after Connie is retired and tending to her grandchildren a lot more than she does right now, Anne Marie and David will exemplify the quality of planning and directorship that Connie has certainly exemplified from a county and now a state level. We all thank you for making Delaware and Dover a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you for the privilege. Thank you.
Item number 4A on the agenda this evening is a public hearing and final reading of proposed ordinance 2014-18. First reading was accomplished during the council meeting of August 25th, 2014. Copies of the proposed ordinance are available at the entrance of council chambers. Since it's an amendment to the zoning code, a public hearing is required. First, I'll entertain a motion to consider the final reading by title only, which is to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption. What's the pleasure of council?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Slavin, second by Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2014-18, amending Appendix B, zoning Article 3, District Regulations, Section 24, Planned Neighborhood Design Option, PND, subsection 24-62, buffers, and Article 4 zoning bulk and parking regulations, sections 4.10 and 4.11. Mrs. Townsend.
Thank you. This is an ordinance that was brought forward under sponsorship from members of council, and it does, the principal thing that it does is it takes the 40-foot required buffer out of the requirements for the planned neighborhood design. Currently, any development that's approved in planned neighborhood design has to have a 40-foot buffer around the perimeter in which no structure can be built. In many cases, this has not posed a problem, as you have, we've really worked over the years to try to get that 40 feet in the open space. Unfortunately, there are a number of places where
the houses are, where the 40 feet is on the lots, and the houses are built right to that 40-foot line. And that means people cannot have sheds, decks, fences, and any other type of improvement that would be typical in a rear yard. So what this ordinance would do is remove that 40-foot buffer requirement. I think that when that was put in, back when the PND section was originally developed, the idea was that we weren't sure if there was going to be some concern about compatibility with surrounding development. I think we have a track record that shows that these PNDs blend in just like anything else, and that the 40-foot buffer is not needed. The other piece of this ordinance is that it changes the front and rear setbacks. It doesn't change the lot coverage, but by changing the front and rear setbacks, it gives the builders a little bit more flexibility in how they lay out their lots. So this did go to the Planning Commission, had a public hearing in September, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended in favor of approval of the ordinance. Now, I will say I did not look at the packet after it was published, and as I was sitting here this evening preparing, I realized that the amendment that was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission is not in the packet. So, which is why I stepped out while Mrs. Holland was talking and talked to Mr. Pardee, who's some of his clients had specifically requested this ordinance. I would recommend at this point proceeding with the public hearing and tabling the ordinance and taking final action on the ordinance at the October 27th meeting. What I can tell you is that what was called Staff Amendment 1 was an amendment that would simply add language to the ordinance to clarify that this is intended to be retroactive, and that developments that have been previously approved with the 40-foot buffer as part of the requirement would not be subject to that 40-foot buffer.
Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. Any
And
questions?
I do apologize for that error.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Persa.
Just a question regarding, you had mentioned fences and sheds and various outbuildings not being permitted to be placed outside of the setback areas.
Right.
Why not change the code just to permit placement of fences and basically non-residential structures outside of those setback areas? Why the drastic change in eliminating the buffers?
I think in looking at it, the rear setbacks serve the purpose, so that 40-foot buffer is just kind of an added layer that isn't necessary. It doesn't add any additional value.
To who? For developers or people who live in the development?
Where we've heard the most complaint has been property owners who can't put a deck up, for instance. That's
Well, yeah,
Right.
then why not just change it to say you can put a deck up or put a fence or shed in without changing the entire?
About a year ago, staff started looking at doing this sort of an amendment. We wanted to look at this in accordance with some other amendments we were looking at for the PND, and we started down that road that you mentioned of looking at allowing certain things within that 40-foot buffer. And the conclusion we came to was that that 40-foot buffer doesn't really add any value. And so we could either provide exceptions of what you could put in there, or we could take that away and just let the setbacks.
Does modifying the setbacks and trimming them back by the 10, 15 feet, does that give the value that the people in the community are looking for versus modifying the entire 40-foot safety zone?
Well, modifying the setbacks only addresses one piece, because just if you have a setback that's 20 feet, the 40-foot overrides. So, like for instance, the zoning ordinance allows you to put an open deck into your rear setback. Mm-hmm. But because of this 40-foot, we've had to deny deck permits.
I realize this has gone through the Planning Commission.
Right.
They've done all.
That's fine, yeah.
Did they consider just trimming the buffer then from 40 to 20, just moving the whole thing back 20 feet instead of doing the double?
It wasn't really discussed. It was something that was, again, drafted and had sponsors and then put forward to evaluate based on how it was drafted.
Okay.
So.
Just asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, then Mr. Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you would please direct this to Mrs. Townsend. Mrs. Townsend, is there any other development type in our city code that has such a 40-foot buffer?
No, there's not.
So that was something that was unique, that was an experiment, and it turned out that experiment said that it did more harm than good. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree based on the feedback we've gotten from property owners, individual lot owners.
Then I know that when some years ago I was a civilian member on a Parks Rec community enhancement, I had a concern about that at the when this was beginning. So I'm glad that we're reviewing this, because I think it's harmed using the P&D code. Has anyone actually looked at the P&D code, looked at an application, and then decided not to go that way because of some of the red tape?
Not in recent years. I've only been here since 2006, and we haven't had a lot of subdivision activity since then. But in the cases where people have used P&Ds, since I've been here, it's really been senior citizen housing. So they're doing that to get a housing type that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and the property's large enough that they can lay it out to not have a problem with it. It's really been an issue. Developments where I've seen real issues and had property owners very upset have been Cannon Mills and Clearview Meadow, where unfortunately the lots are affected by that 40-foot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Lynn.
My question is more procedural than substantive, and that's the public hearing component. Given the absence of information from the packet, do we really want to proceed forward on the public hearing tonight? I guess that's probably a question for Mr. Rodriguez.
I think you're probably correct there. It might be better to hold a public hearing at the next meeting.
That was my thought as well. And then the second component, what subdivisions is this particularly aimed at addressing?
Specifically, the two that I mentioned, Cannon Mills and Clearview Meadow, are the two where we've heard the most issues. Other subdivisions have kept that 40-foot in open space, so it hasn't really created a problem.
Are those the two that we want to address retroactively? Because you said there was a retroactive component.
Well, what we had determined at the staff level in terms of the retroactivity is that we would go back and determine what individual lots are affected by the 40-foot, and then we would, if this is adopted, we would notify the property owners in writing that they could, that they could record an updated survey that shows that being removed.
Prospectively, moving forward, what subdivisions are we dealing with here? Are there any on the horizon that seek to take advantage of this?
We do not have any in the pipeline at this point.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. In light of the, Mr. Hutchison.
Well, I think it's important to point out that this particular proposal is really a house cleaning. And I know that there was a large number of individuals who worked with the planning department and Anne Marie and staff in working to bring this back to us. Certainly your recommendation for the whole thing, I think is certainly the way to which to go.
And again, I apologize for that oversight.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. In light of what's been discussed here this evening, Chair will entertain a motion to defer.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Slavin, seconded by Mrs. Williams. Any questions on the motion to defer?
Can I ask a question to the solicitor just for clarification?
Absolutely.
Since the The hearing was advertised for tonight, and anybody who is interested in being here for the hearing is aware of the deferral. We're not in violation of any public notice, right?
I don't think we are.
Okay, that's been my experience in the past. I just wanted it clear for the record.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, there is a motion to defer, seconded by Mrs. Williams. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr.
Mr. Persa? But
We just talked about Part A, we still gonna do Part B? 4A, 4B?
B is a separate ordinance, so yes,
B's a
just
different
that.
ordinance.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously to defer until the next meeting. Item number 4B, public hearing and final reading, proposed ordinance 2014-20. The first reading was accomplished during the council meeting of August 25th, 2014. Copies of the proposed ordinance are available at the entrance of council chambers. Since this is an amendment to the zoning code, a public hearing is required. First, I'll entertain a motion to consider the final reading by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption. Pleasure of council.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Hutchison. Second
Second.
by Mr. Slavin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2014-20, amending Appendix B, zoning, Article 10, Planning Commission, Section 2, Site Development Plan Approval. Mrs. Townsend.
All right, thank you. You'll recall that back in July, City Council approved an ordinance that overhauled the commercial and office zones in the zoning ordinance, and as a part of that, amended sections of Article 10, which is the process section that describes the Planning Commission and site plan process, to change some of the thresholds. And immediately after City Council adopted that, we met with Playtex. And we were very excited that that was going to be our first opportunity to use the allowance of a 15% expansion of floor area administratively rather than taking it to the Planning Commission. What we realized quickly is that when you're increasing floor area, you're also increasing impervious cover, and we did not reflect that same language in additions of impervious surface. So we immediately drafted an amendment where we mirror the language under additions to existing structures and put that also in additions to impervious surface. This did go to the Planning Commission in September. There was a public hearing. There were no members of the public that spoke with regard to the ordinance, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. So I would say with this issue, I would say I have used my quota of oversights for the next year or two, and we'll proceed accordingly. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions of staff? This does require a public hearing. I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Anyone who would like to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, is there anyone who would speak against the proposed amendment? Anyone who would like to speak against the proposed amendment? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Pleasure of council. Mrs. Williams.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hutchison. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 8, the Utility Committee report, except for the following time-sensitive issue, the Utility Committee report for October 13th to be presented during this regular council meeting. Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Early this evening, the Utility Committee did meet to discuss the dedication of the right-of-way and public infrastructure of the Village of Cannon Mill, phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. After discussion, it was recommended and passed. And I therefore would make a motion to that effect. We recommend the acceptance of the entire dedication contingent upon city completing the amount of work where funding is available. There are several sources of funding for this, and we need to make sure that this doesn't touch the general fund. And so I would make that motion at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Second to the motion. Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lind?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item 10A, evaluations of bids for the Village of Cannon Mill Paving Improvements Project. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Bonar. In the packet tonight is an action form prepared by the Public Works Department. As you know, we've been working for more than a year on trying to get several of the unfinished developments moving through the process. Staff went out and did a detailed estimate of all 4 phases of Cannon Mill, and that resulted in a bid package that was bid out. We had 3 interested bidders, George and Lynch, Daisy Construction, and Adel Construction. Based on the evaluations of the bids, George and Lynch is the lowest responsible bidder at $824,740. This would be a unit price contract to complete the paving and some miscellaneous concrete work in the Village of Cannon Mill. The available funding as of October 2nd was $540,069. And as we indicated earlier this evening at the Utility Committee meeting, we would be proposing to award a unit price contract based on the bid documents and allowing the staff to adjust those unit prices up to the available funding. So if we secure additional funding through a transfer from some other agreements, community transportation fund agreements, that we would be allowed to add to this up to potentially the $824,740.75 low bid. If we are not able to secure that funding, we would do work up to the funding secured, and then we would come back at a later date through community transportation funds or some other source of funds so that the general fund is not subsidizing this work. Based on the review of the bids, staff is recommending the unit contract price award to George and Lynch Incorporated and allowing us to adjust the funding up to available funding to complete.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Any questions of staff? Mr. Lind.
Just briefly, and Mr. Koenig, I can't recall if it was Cannon Mills or Village of Westover, but council had voted to call a letter of credit from First National Bank of Wyoming, which is now, I can't recall the name of the bank. WSFS. I've never gotten an update on where we are with this. Was it Cannon Mills or was it Village of Westover?
It was both. There was 2 separate letters of credit. We actually called a letter of credit with the Village of Westover. I think that was M&T Bank. Okay. We called that letter of credit and we completed the work. There's some funding that's still available, so we're going to use that in Cannon Mill. In the Village of Cannon Mill, there was an initial letter of credit provided from the First National Bank of Wyoming, which only covered phases 1 and 2. But there was an expiration clause in that letter of credit, which is not typical in our other letters of credit. And when we recommended that staff call the letter of credit after that meeting, we sent a call, just like we sent to the Village of Westover, And there was a transaction between the attorney for First National Bank indicating that they had notified us of the expiration of the letter of credit. And the issue at that point really became, was it, they sent it certified versus registered, but they did notify us. Mr. Pepper then asked us to get hard numbers on all the bids. We did that earlier this year in August, but he felt that there was too much time that had lapsed, and that the distinction between registered and certified was not strong enough to initiate any proceeding beyond the transfer of correspondence.
And all of that had transpired before council voted on calling the letter of credit. So everything that you've just detailed, with the exception of the last part, that Mr. Pepper thought too much time had elapsed, had all transpired before we voted on it.
Right, we went and we did additional bids after that.
But council never knew that any of that transpired. It never came back to us after we gave you the marching orders to call the letter of credit. And this isn't a criticism of you, Mr. Koenig, but to me, it's unacceptable that, and I think that Mr. Perza and I and several others had this conversation on the floor. We all knew the difference between the registered and certified. We still voted, call the letter of credit. We gave instruction to Mr. Pepper to file a lawsuit or do whatever else needed to get done to secure that this money wasn't going to come out of taxpayer pockets, but was going to come from the bank. So it's somewhat vexing to hear now, a year later, 2 years later, that our instructions were never followed. When we're taking a vote on this, I'd really rather have the bank pay it than anybody else.
Mr. Lynn, I understand that all the correspondence, all the minutes and stuff were passed back and forth with Mr. Pepper. We have 250 plus residents out there. We've been dealing with a difficult situation in this development since probably 09, maybe 10. And I understand the frustration. Unfortunately, I don't think my personal opinion, and I'm not an attorney, obviously, is that we, as in me, made a mistake in this letter of credit that won't happen again because we've refined the process a little bit. But this was an unprecedented, but it was an abnormal letter of credit in the sense that this letter of credit had a 1-year window on it, and then there was supposed to be a subsequent letter of credit that was submitted afterwards, and that didn't happen. And then the original Moore Cannon Mill LLC pulled out of the partnership and left it with the Rubino companies. There was, again, no subsequent letter of credit, which there should have been if I had done all the paperwork, but there wasn't. And since that time, the Rubino companies have gone bankrupt. There is no more Rubino. So it is an error. It's a problem. The legislators have assisted us with trying to get out of this problem. We're trying to finish the development. We've been having complaints for the last 3 years of not being able to provide service to the residents out there because the roads are unfinished. It's very difficult during the winter months. Ms. Townsend and myself have talked to various people related to getting the homeowners association up and running so that we can kind of pull this community back to where it needs to be so that the property values can begin accelerating again versus declining. And this is, as I said at the committee meeting, this is the one development where we did not have a good grip on the letter of credit. We've been fortunate in that respect, in the sense that originally when we talked a couple years ago about the same issue, the exposure to us at that time, if I recall correctly, was the Village of Westover Phase 6, Clearview Meadows, Cannon Mill, and Eden Hill. Since that time, we've finished the Village of Westover. The city did that with the letter of credit. Clearview Meadows, a developer stepped in and completed all of that work for us. In Eden Hill, we still have an active letter of credit from that developer. This was the one that we were not successful with.
And Mr. Koenig, you're taking blame where I don't think blame is necessary. A lot of the facts that you've discussed, we knew when we instructed you guys to go after First National Bank of Wyoming. I guess the disconnect here is, why didn't we go after the First National Bank of Wyoming? How is that did not occur?
All I can say is after that meeting, we sent the call letter like we would do on a normal letter. The attorney for First National Bank of Wyoming responded to myself and Mr. Pepper. And then for some reason, Mr. Pepper wanted additional cost estimates. It took us quite a long time to get them because of staff availability. Then when we got them earlier this summer, Mr. Pepper felt that the time frame between the original action, I guess, or the expiration, and now was substantial, that the corporate entity was dissolved or had been transferred from First National to WSFS, and that the issue of registered versus certified was not a very strong argument.
Regardless, WSFS is the successor in interest to First National Bank of Wyoming and is beholden to their obligations. You know, I'm not happy that this was never done. I don't think these decisions can be made kind of behind closed doors and never brought back to council for us to weigh in. I mean, we specifically gave marching orders, go after the bank. You know, my interpretation of that was go sue the bank. I'm not happy that it wasn't done. Cases have been won and lost on the distinction between registered and certified.
Right. As I said before, I'm not an attorney. I don't know that it would bar us from doing the work and then still filing action. So,
Mr. Persin.
Just to kind of clarify, we, at the earlier utility meeting, did discuss this issue for about 45 minutes. A lot of those issues regarding bonding were brought up. I think Mr. Lynn's points are all accurate and important in the sense that there may be liabilities that have not been resolved yet in terms of how to do this, but we're also on the local level balancing the needs of the community out there. Is they don't care what's going on with the bond, the folks that live in the Cannon Mills and these developments out in that end of town. When we have another winter coming up with snow and other complications related to the high school and traffic and things like that, is they don't want to be held hostage in this, and so we understand that. The utility committee went out of its way to try to make sure that the city wouldn't be left holding the bag, in the sense that if something went wrong, the city would be outstanding $1 million or so in cost of completing this. So when the motions came out of the committee, they were all contingent on making sure that there were parties that were not City of Dover taxpayers supplying the funds to correct the problem, which is a short-term fix. Ultimately, the immediate cost of paying for the improvements will be made by the lines of credit we have been able to call and by the local legislatures who have also been dealing with the problem for a number of years. I don't believe that us moving forward necessarily closes the book on should we go back and look at some of these old lines of credit and banks that have basically defaulted on the obligations in order to help the local community. But I think for purposes of assisting the local community, I think the city does have an interest in wrapping this up and getting them help. Same way when you meet with a client, at least from Sean and my perspective, we meet with a client, there's damage control. At this point, we got to get the development finished in a way that doesn't harm the city. We don't want to spend $1 million if we don't get the money back. So I'm willing to go ahead, finish the development, get that done, make sure that somebody else pays those costs so that it's not on city taxpayers. But I'm also willing to look and examine the legal issues that Mr. Lynn's addressed with the legal counsel. So for that reason, I think I'm comfortable moving forward tonight as long as the city taxpayers are protected in that, and we reserve the right to examine whether we can effectively have the state taxpayers reimbursed for this, because I think that's where a lot of the money is going to be coming from in any event.
Thank you, Mr. Persin. Mrs. Williams.
Mr. Koenig, in your conversations with Mr. Pepper, was Mr. Pepper, I understand the concerns he had, was it also the concerns of the cost of litigation?
He never mentioned the cost of litigation.
Never, that was not a consideration for him for the city?
It was nothing for him, no.
How about you?
I'm always concerned about the cost of litigation because I get all the legal bills. So, but it's not what we never determined a cost of litigation, so it was not a deterrent in the sense that he didn't say it's going to cost $100,000 to do this.
So what you decided to do instead was to find a way to try and get some help with this so that the impact to the city would be minimal, if none.
Right.
And the residents of Cannon Mill would be serviced as they should be.
I've had a number of conversations with people in Cannon Mill that are very frustrated by
Sure.
the process itself. So, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair has a question. Mr. Koenig, these additional funds, are they coming from legislative community transportation funds?
There are several sources of funds right now. There is roughly $320,000 in community transportation funds. We have what I would call the management fee associated with called letters of credit from other developments. And then we have in phases 3 and 4 some partial letters of credit that we didn't have previously from both Artisans Bank. We have a commitment letter from them, and we have also a letter of credit on some lots in phase 3 or 4 from Tony Ashburn that because the banks have acquired these lots and people are trying to develop them now. So there is some difference in the scenario since we first talked about this a year or so ago.
My concern is this, and the question that I would ask, here we are roughly the middle of October.
Yes.
If we pass this and move this along tonight, are we going to be able to get it done before the first of the year?
I'm hopeful that Georgia Lynch can mobilize quickly. We've been talking to them about trying to get in here immediately, so at least a portion of this work will get done before winter sets in.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions of staff? Pleasure of council.
Again, Mr. President, I would move to approve this.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Second,
Thank you,
Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
I had raised my hand before the vote. I'm curious if the maker of the motion would amend it to include a provision that we seek compensation from the First National Bank of Wyoming and/or its successor in interest.
I would prefer to leave this motion solitary, but I would certainly support a subsequent motion to that effect.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Sleep?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Would there be a second motion on this?
Yes, I would move that we would seek compensation from the First National Bank of Wyoming or its successors in interest relative to the letter of credit that they issued on this project.
I would second that motion.
Moved by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mrs. Williams. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Perza.
Are we deferring to our legal counsel on this, or are we directing them to do this? What's the intent?
I thought we already had directed.
It was my understanding we had directed.
Yeah, so but this time we really, really, really mean it. Go sue them. So why it's not done yet, I don't know, but let's do it this time.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a motion to the second on the floor. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Really, really mean it, yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Perza?
I think we have the right to do this whether we vote or not, so I'm going to say no.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 7-1.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I realize that when I made the motion, the original motion for Cannon Mills, that I forgot to make a motion to accept the report of the utility committee.
That was going to be my next report.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Williams to accept the report.
Second.
Second by Mr. Slavin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 10B, evaluation of bids for arc-related flame-resistant clothing. Koenig.
Thank you, Council President Bonar. If you'll recall, when we brought forward the IBEW contract many months ago, there was a discussion about clothing in the contract, and the city as well as the union wishing to improve the quality of the clothing, give some options for various clothing that was not in the old bid, and to rebid the services. So over the last few months, members from the IBEW, from the electric department management, as well as the finance department and our procurement staff have met and prepared an RFP for flame retardant clothing for electric department employees. That was put into a bid package and sent out. There were 5 potential vendors that responded to the request for proposals. Upon final review of the proposals that were submitted, there was only one vendor who met all of the qualifications. 4 of the vendors were ultimately disqualified because they do not offer a segment of the bid package called repairs to the garments if needed. So for the proposal for the first year of the contract, staff is recommending award to Tyndall Company per the specifications that were sent out. There is the possibility for 4 one-year extensions if the city believes that they're performing at the satisfactory level. There are already approved proposed escalators in the contract. Staff is recommending awarding the contract to Tyndall, mainly because we believe that in the long run, this is actually a cost savings measure based on the original proposals from the union, whereas there's a setup cost in the first year, but in subsequent years, it's actually a cost savings to the city of Dover. So this is a little bit different than we've done it in the past. It's always been, I think it's been low bid. This was more of a performance specification. So it's a little bit new to us to go for in this direction for a clothing contract, but we're comfortable with the proposal. I believe the staff as well as the union is in favor of the proposal, and we would recommend approval of it.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams.
Mr. Koenig, several years ago, we had that accident,
Yes.
and it was a result of many things, but the issue was the personnel from the city was not wearing fire protective equipment. If we pass this, is there anything in place now that would enhance the probability that people would be wearing the proper equipment?
There are additional, I think, inspection safety measures that are in place since that accident happened. One of them being that it's a very real possibility because a lot of people saw the results of that accident. So I think that has helped improve the safety. In addition, as I said before, there's components of this clothing proposal that the staff really wanted because it gave them some different clothing options. So in this case, they should be much more willing to wear certain items because they're more customized, I guess is the best word for it. But it's a combination of the availability of the clothing, the requirements for safety, and the employee recognizing that it only takes a split second to change the course of your life. So
right.
My short answer to your question is yes, I think it's improved over what it was for many different reasons. And the fact that we have this contract being brought forward is even one additional reason why we should never have that problem again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Persa.
If the one requirement that disqualified the other 4 was the requirement that garments be repaired, or I guess be able to take them back if they get damaged or something like that, how much extra does that cost, and how often does it happen?
I don't know. Yeah.
Do we know how much extra we're paying for the one provision we get, and then is it 1 in 100 things we buy, or does all this stuff break and it's got to go back every 6 weeks? I don't know anything about, but I don't know how much extra we're paying for it.
I don't know the answer to your question. I don't think it's a routine issue. I mean, clothing gets damaged on, I wouldn't call it a regular basis, but there are tears, stuff like that. I think that they can actually repair, so you're not actually getting new garments. So what typically happens if a garment gets damaged, then the other vendors, I think, want you just to purchase a new garment. whereas this vendor will, assuming that they can do it under the safety codes, they would repair the garment versus just telling you have to buy a new garment. But I don't have a way to quantify that question tonight.
I guess the practical, if it costs us 50% more to get the warranty basically in there, is it cheaper to, a 1 in 100 piece of equipment just to buy a new one than to pay the 50% surcharge? That's my question.
I don't have in front of me what we're paying currently, but I don't think that this cost proposal is extravagantly higher than we are right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't have agreed to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Person. Any other questions of staff? Pleasure of council. Slavin.
Move the approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hutchison. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item 11, first reading proposed ordinance 2014-22. We have the first reading of proposed ordinance 2014-22, which has been referred to us by the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee. Final action by council will take place during the second reading of the ordinance on October 27, 2014. Copies of all proposed ordinances are available at the entrance of City Council chambers, or they may be obtained from the City Clerk's office. Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes, the ordinance in front of you this evening is to adjust the budgets for the projects that were not completed last year. We calculated the budget balances, and this is to adjust the FY15 budget to bring those budget balances forward so they can complete the projects with the budget in place.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Any questions of staff?
Mr. President, I have a quick one.
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Mrs. Mitchell, the park reserve, that the $104,000 of revenue is transferred in, I was curious because there was, then the transfer expense was the same 100,000. It didn't change at all. I'm a little confused on that. Could you please clarify?
The 104,000 that's transferred in, I have to go back and get back with you on that, Mr. Anderson. There was some additional receipts, so I'll have to get back to you what that was. Okay?
Well, I guess this turned out not to be as quick as I thought.
I actually think, I'll have to look at it. It might have been part of a carry forward from the transfer we did last year, thinking about it further. The transfer we did last year that a project wasn't completed, so we didn't transfer all the receipt because the project wasn't completed. But I'll check it and I'll get back to you before the final reading.
So that money still stays in the...
Yes. What we try to do is we don't transfer the funds from reserves unless the money's spent. So even though you budgeted to transfer a certain amount of money, if it all didn't get spent, we don't transfer it. So I'll have to look at that and I'll let you know for sure.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, if there are no further questions or proposed amendments, I'll now defer to the city clerk for the introduction of the ordinance in accordance with section 1-9 of the Dover City Code. Madam Clerk.
Proposed ordinance number 2014-22, budget amendment related to capital investment plan, fiscal year 2014 carry forward balances. This constitutes the first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This brings us to item number 12, which is council members' announcements. Anyone with an announcement this evening? Mr. Hutchison.
Mr. President, I had the opportunity to attend the Dover Police Department promotion ceremony last week. And I might say that it was extremely well attended. And all of us can be very, very proud of the men and women of the Dover Police Department, both active duty and certainly civilian. But I also want to bring your attention to Mark Hall, who is our assistant fire chief. He's also a full-time dispatcher for the 911 center, and he was recognized as Outstanding Employee of the Year. And I just want to recognize him tonight in behalf of, for what he has done, because he certainly went way beyond the call of duty for what he was recognized for. And Mark, to you, I express most sincere congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other council comments? Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. This month is designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I would like to thank the people who volunteer in our city and county to help the women and men and children who are victims of domestic violence. I want to encourage them to keep doing their good work and encourage us all to support them.
Thank you, sir. Any other council members' announcements? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Mr. Dixon, you are adjourned.